Hi, thanks for watching. This is Jessie, and today I'm going to be reviewing Girl in Ice by Erica Ferencik, which I received as an advanced reader copy from Simon and Schuster. Thank you very much for this. It was quite a thrilling read. My life is loud. So I have 4 kids. Well, the house is down to 3 kids because my 18-year-old moved to Texas, or moved back to Texas. But I still have 3 kids, 8, 9, and 10 years old. And I have 2 dogs. I am married to an ex-Marine who has a very loud indoor voice. And a couple times a week we go over to his father's house and we play euchre with his father and his sister. It gets loud there. My life is loud. On top of that, I work on the phones. So it takes a lot for a book or really anything to put me in the mood, not the mood, what word am I looking for? The headspace, I guess, to ignore everything. I don't hear the kids, I don't hear the TV, because that's another thing, there's always a TV going somewhere. And usually on top of the TV, one of my kids has their phone or their tablet or their Chromebook or whatever device they're happening to use at the moment. There's usually something going on one of those two that I can hear in addition to the TV and all the voices in the room. So it's been a while since anything's put me in the headspace to be able to just block everything out and just fall into something. And this book was it. So this is about Val. Val had a twin. His name was Andy. And Andy was the favorite. Andy is a brilliant scientist and he's outgoing, and Val is not. Val is a brilliant linguist, but she's not outgoing. And on top of not being outgoing, she has crippling anxiety. The only time she's ever been out of her home state of Massachusetts is when she went on a field trip to Washington, D.C. for school. And she couldn't get back on the bus to go home. She had to have her father leave work, drive down to Washington to pick her up, and drive back. And so when I say crippling anxiety, I mean crippling anxiety. She's never gone out of the U.S. She had a couple of opportunities to study abroad. She didn't take them, but she is still brilliant in her field. So her brother, he studies the ecosystem. He's a climatologist, and he's always going off about how we're past that point where we can turn around. We are no longer at the point where if we fix everything today, if we stop fracking, if we start paying attention to what we're doing to the earth, if everything perfects itself tomorrow, it's not going to make a difference. We're already past that point. And he's become somewhat obsessed with the situation. And he has mentioned a couple times to his sister about how it's affected him emotionally. And the last time that she sees him, he has been kicked out of his house where he lives with his fiance because he doesn't want kids. Because of this, he thinks, what is the point of continuing our line, bringing kids into this world that we know is dying? So when the call comes in to say that Andy has committed suicide by walking out of the place in Greenland where him and his mentor are studying something, he walks out into negative degrees, wearing only his boxers, and freezes to death. Val is devastated, but she doesn't think that there's anything amiss. A couple weeks or a couple months later, I'm not really sure how long the time frame was between when that happened and when Wyatt reaches out to her. But Wyatt is Andy's mentor that he was with up in Greenland. And Wyatt emails Val. She's initially just going to delete the email because she just doesn't want to deal with the feelings again. But at the last second, she opens the email and she reads his information that he's sending her. What he's saying is that they found a girl frozen in the ice where a crevice opened up in the ice, and she thawed out alive. And so Val is taken aback. She's not entirely certain that she can believe this crazy, wild assertion that Wyatt has made through the email, but he sends her a wave document or a wave file. He sends her a wave file with the girl talking, and this is where he needs Val's expertise, because the language that the girl is talking, nobody knows what it is. So he wants Val to fly to Greenland and try to communicate with the girl. So Val goes and she talks to her father, who was also a brilliant climatologist. She talks to him at the nursing facility where he's at, and their relationship is strained. Andy was always the favorite one, and Val is just kind of pushed aside. So she goes and talks to her father, and her father essentially tells her, you go figure out what happened to your brother, because I don't believe he committed suicide, or don't bother coming to see me anymore, which is heartbreaking in itself. Val even says in the book that she was expecting him to push her to take this opportunity and fly out there, but she wasn't expecting it to be that drastic. Like, don't come back if you can't figure out what happened to your brother. So Val packs 4 weeks of her anxiety medication because she's not expecting to stay there any longer than absolutely necessary. And she gets on a military plane and flies out to Greenland. It's not just Val. There's also Nora and Raj, who are also scientists, but they're studying something else. They're studying eels and narwhals and walruses and basically the wildlife that's out there. And they all get there. There's a little bit of tension between Raj and Wyatt, but it doesn't immediately boil over. And Wyatt introduces Val to the girl. And the girl is dirty. She refuses to take a bath. She screams when anybody comes near her. She just keeps talking in her language as if she's got something important to say. And Val is completely taken aback. She doesn't have a good rapport with kids. She thinks it's because they know that she doesn't necessarily like them. And so she begins this arduous task of trying to communicate with this girl and realizes that it doesn't match any of the languages that even she knows. It would be understandable that a normal person who maybe only speaks 1 or 2 languages doesn't recognize the language that the girl was speaking in. But even Val doesn't recognize it. And Val is an expert in not only dead languages, but ancient languages. And she doesn't recognize what the girl is saying either. So weeks go by, and they have full dark coming on, where the sun is going to set and it's going to be nighttime for 4 months, and they need to get out of there because the temperatures will drop to 50 below zero. And it's non-conducive to life, even in the buildings that they have set up out there. So she's talking to the girl, and little by little she starts to understand some of the language. And this is where like the really geeky linguist in me just comes out. I'm so excited about this. So this language that the girl is speaking, spoiler alert, sorry. This language that the girl is speaking, the sentences start with emotions, which is awesome. The first sentence, the first word of the sentence is the emotion that they're feeling, followed by the facts in every sentence that the girl speaks. And it's incredible. And she starts to get some things. She gets some nouns. She gets the word for mother and father. She gets the first 8 numbers, the numbers 1 through 8, and the girl's name. She finds out that the girl's name is Sigrid. Something is off, and she can feel it. She has a feeling that Wyatt is hiding things from her, and so she starts hiding things from Wyatt. And so when Wyatt asks her how far along she is with communicating with the girl, she lies and tells him it's less than what she's at. And this entire time, Wyatt is belittling her for not getting as far as he thinks that she should. In the meantime, the girl is now, like a couple weeks in, the girl is fascinated with markers and paper, and she's drawing, and she's drawing, and she's drawing, and sometimes she draws circles, and the last circle she runs red all over it. And she's also drawing what appears to be birds and snakes. And it seems really important to her. So Val is trying to figure out what the birds and what the snakes mean. And it comes to Val that maybe the circles that she's drawing are suns, which are concerning because if they're suns, they're getting smaller. So it starts with 15 suns with the last one scribbled out in red. And then 14 suns and the last one scribbled out in red. So now it's become a ticking time bomb for Val. She needs to figure out what this girl is trying to communicate because the girl is starting to get sick. And she thinks it has something to do with whether or not the girl is going to survive. And it's just the way that Erica Ferencik weaves everything together in this book. The climatology piece, the science fiction part, the linguistics part, the emotional part. Val is a perfect character in this book. She's described with her anxiety and how she feels when her pills come up missing during this expedition, and the things that people ask her to do that a normal person wouldn't think twice about, but somebody with anxiety, it's devastating to them because they have to say no, and they know that these people are looking at them like it's nothing, just do this for me. But in reality, it's making their palms sweat, their hands are cold. It's a really, really well written, well thought out character development when it comes to Val. And like I said, I just fell into this book. I was reading it, even past when I went to bed. Normally I go to bed, and if I can't fall asleep right away, I'll pull out my phone and I'll read a book on my phone. But I don't have it on my phone. It was a hard copy ARC. So I would lay there in bed with the light on while John has his arm over his eyes just trying to finish this book. And I am so glad I did. I remember when I was picking out the books from Simon Schuster that I was going to get, and it was this one and The Boy with the Bird in His Chest, and there was, I think, 10 more options, and I have to say, I am thrilled and ecstatic with my choices for this one. It is a phenomenal book. If I had any complaints, it would be that some of the sentence structure is a little off. So when I'm reading it, it's not throughout the whole book. It's only in certain sections, and so that makes me think that it's just part of it being an advanced reader's edition. But there's a lot of sentence fragments in here, almost as if the writer was throwing her thoughts in there that she was going to expand on later. There's also some words in here that, like, I had to look up, and I mean, I don't have a master's or anything. I don't have a doctorate in English. I don't know every word in the dictionary, but it's rare for me to come across a word in a book that I have to look up. And I asked my sister-in-law, and she's brilliant also. She, I think, memorized the GRE book, so she knows more words than I do, and she didn't know what it meant either, so it was really strange to run across that. It was a little jarring, especially since it was so close to the beginning of the book. I hadn't gotten to that point where I was so involved in the book that everything else just got muted. But other than that, I really don't have any complaints. The way that they describe the Arctic terrain, the snow, the ice, the character development, the emotions, everything I thought was phenomenally written. And so I gave this 4.25 out of 5 stars. But it might go up. It might go up. The more that it sits with me, it was the perfect book for me because of the wintry landscape, because I love books that take place in winter, and the climate, the cli-fi part of it. I love climate fiction. 2012 and The Day After Tomorrow and The Core and Geostorm, like, those are some of my favorite movies. And then the linguistics part of it was just, it made it the perfect blend of just these different genres in this one book. And so I was really happy with it. So this one also, like The Boy with the Bird in His Chest, I really hope you pick it up. And this one's not magical realism. So if the magical realism wasn't your thing, but maybe science fiction, climate fiction is a little bit more your thing, this is a great one. You also pick up some wonderful words from other languages. So words that mean whole sentences or whole strings of sentences push into one word. And that was another part of it that I found really interesting. I'm going to stop rambling. Thank you so much for watching. Like and subscribe below.